Welcome to Hable Talks, the podcast about people and tech. My name's Mark Reynolds and my co-host is Sean O'Shea. Hi Sean.
Morning.
How are you?
Well, I'm feeling good. I'm delighted, Mark, that you've decided to record this podcast immediately after my 40th birthday, first thing in the morning. So thank you for that.
That's fine. How are you feeling? Have you got a hangover of any sort?
No, I feel pretty good actually. And, with our guests that we're about to introduce now, I think this whole entering your 40s with this kind of, bald and beard look, the B&B look, I think that's the way forward. So I feel pretty good actually about life this morning.
That's good. So just for our listeners, Sean turned 40 yesterday. So let's all give him a quick round of applause. Hector, you can join in this bit even before your intro. And welcome Sean to his 40s.
Thank you. That's made it even better.
Overly happy about it. But, life begins, mate. Your life begins today. So congratulations. Now, this is a really exciting day because we're about to do our first guest interview on Hable Talks. And so I'd like to introduce the Microsoft Accessibility Evangelist, and he'll explain to you what that means in a minute, Hector Minto.
Hey.
Hi, Hector. How are you?
Hey, I'm very well. Good to be with you both. Happy birthday for yesterday, Sean.
Thank you.
Definitely life begins at 40. That's absolutely 100%. Yeah.
Well, Hector, you were my aspiration. When I entered my 40s, I thought, what do I want to look like? Where do I want to be? And basically, it was look like Hector. That's my plan.
You're doing very well. I mean, you need a bit more grey in that beard, but you're getting there. Yeah.
I'm working on it. Spending
very
time with
handsome.
Mark,
Very handsome guy.
Thanks. This is great. This is my best podcast yet. This is brilliant.
I'm kind of seeing double a little bit. I'm looking to the right under my screen. It's a little bit like that. So we're going to talk to Hector about people and tech, obviously, which is the theme of the podcast. We're going to try and get to know him a little bit. But Hector, maybe you could start off just by telling us what a Microsoft Accessibility Evangelist does and a bit about your background and how you ended up working for Microsoft.
Sure. Well, look, I mean, first things first, what is accessibility? I mean, honestly, people have so many different kind of ideas of what that might be, but essentially accessibility is digital tech and disability. How do people with disabilities use technology and exist, frankly, within this new digital world that we're all part of? My role within Microsoft is essentially to build confidence, muscle, competence as we go out and engage with customers, partners, society at large, in the role that Microsoft has in building tech that works for all. I mean, how are we all gonna cope as we age, acquire disabilities? How do people with disabilities access education, workplace, life in general, if they're not at the very forefront of our consideration as we build technology? So yeah, that's my job at Microsoft, essentially to go out and get people on board with the agenda. Technically, I sit within our corporate social responsibility team, but actually, most of the time I'm doing customer kind of almost like sales type engagement because people want to now buy technology that is routinely inclusive. So yeah, it's fantastic. And my background is 100% disability and tech. I'm the classic one-trick pony. This is literally all I know. I have no other skills whatsoever. So yeah. Kind of almost like surprised to be at Microsoft. I was listening to your first intro to the podcast, and it was like this idea that how did you leave Microsoft and get brave to go and set up Hable? I kind of felt like, I'm going the other way. It's like, how did I have all that fun outside of Microsoft and then get pulled into the behemoth that is Microsoft? But amazing time.
So how did you get into disability and tech originally? Is that something that happened by accident, or was there a particular reason or motivation for you to work in that field?
I think everybody who got into accessibility, honestly, got there by accident. Very few people. I mean, in terms of a digital discipline, it's really unsupported, I would say, across the world. I mean, people who learn computer science, honestly, they get very little exposure to this topic, and yet it's so important. So most of the kind of the names, I would say, in the accessibility space have kind of come there through living with a disability, acquiring a disability, or just being exposed to an opportunity. It is that topic that once you know it, you love it. I know from working with you and your teams, it's like suddenly everyone goes, I didn't know this was possible. And it is one of those topics that once you get engaged in it, you kind of find it difficult to leave. I've got to be careful in case my mum's listening to this, because she takes too much credit for it, and she tells me every time she listens to these things.
What, you mean she gets cross if you don't give her a shout out?
Yeah, so I'm going to give her the shout out right now, but I'm going to move really quickly on. But I was a young lad growing up in Bristol. My mum's a special ed teacher, essentially, or an adult ed teacher. You know, she did evening classes for people in the community with learning disabilities, and she literally dragged me along to kind of help. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. She was like, you are. Pulled me in to help, and I was exposed to this amazing group of people who were just like hidden away in society. You know, nobody was really kind of aware of just kind of, you know, people were being excluded from education, and so these kind of adult ed classes were put in place. But actually, when you got in and started working with people, you just discovered people who were kind of not an active part of the village that I grew up in, the community, and they were kind of, it just intrigued me, I would say. Well, that's not to say that's how I got into it, but I would say that's definitely that was my first exposure to people with disabilities, you know, in the community and the kind of the education side of things. I'm a chemist by training. I went to university and did chemistry. Maybe we'll come on to that a bit later. Yeah. But I hated it. I really hated the job. I was good at chemistry at school. I loved it. But when I got into the workplace, I was like, I'm not doing this. This is horrendous. And so I took a job selling assistive technology. You know, I found a job that said disability and tech, and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. And I just literally fell into it and started selling assistive technologies. And I've just kind of jumped up through different companies of different size, different status, I would say, and then finally I find myself here at Microsoft. But
interesting.
It was the passion for people, I would say, that kind of got me intrigued.
People and tech.
People in tech, and problem solving around people. You know, if you look at like how people with disabilities approach tech or approach society generally, nothing kind of works. It's not being designed with people with disabilities in mind. So people with disabilities and those working around people with disabilities are constantly hacking, problem solving, making it work for them. So it's a really interesting field. And if you get to problem solve every day, you know, that keeps you motivated, keeps you interested.
So Sean and I talked in the first episode about whether people end up where they think they're going to end up. So it sounds like for you, you know, you fell into this job, but what did you want to be when you grew up? You know, take Hector back to school. What did you dream you'd be when you grew up then?
So I was a grade A student. I'll put it like that. I loved school. I was good at everything that I did. I mean, I was one of those horrible kids, Mark, who kind of just didn't really revise and kind of did it.
Know the feeling.
Yeah, I know. But actually, I never really thought about what I wanted to be. You know, I think when you're kind of in inverted commas good at school, you sort of say, oh, I'm going to go into law, I'm going to go into medicine, and you know, it turned out that through my kind of A levels and things, I was really good at chemistry. It was literally, I didn't even have to try at all. I just knew how it worked, and I got it. And so I did what I was good at. You know, I carried on doing what I was good at, but fundamentally ended up just bored by it. You know, and I think that's the big challenge. Is I'm always jealous of kids, and you know, especially when you're exposed to kind of the interns and the young careers in the tech world. Everybody knows where they're going. They've all got this plan, and I was never that kid. I was like, I don't like any of it.
Yeah. See, I don't know if that's just the Microsoft interns or whether that's
maybe.
Like all 20-year-olds now. But you're right. You meet these kids and they're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to get your job next.
Yeah.
Is that just a generational thing, or is that, you know, just people who end up at Microsoft because you have to be super bright and ambitious to get in as an intern there?
I think there's maybe a bit of that. You know, I look at my own kids now, and I kind of say to them, "What do you want to be?" I've got one kid who absolutely knows he wants to be an architect. I think you were saying that, Sean, as well, right?
I was. Panned out well for me.
But he's like, he knows that's where he's going, and I've got another one who's at that age where he's struggling with his, you know, his GCSE options, kind of saying, I don't really know what I'm good at, you know, and you know, it's tricky for kids. I think the one thing I hate hearing is I'm going to make all my money off YouTube. Like you know, I really hope we look at this generation of kids coming through and get them to start doing jobs that actually impact. Yeah, and actually they do something tangible that they can be proud of. Yeah, the idea of kind of streaming, playing Forza, you know, fills me
Yeah.
with absolute dread.
I know.
Yeah.
When you're talking to, because you spend your time talking to all sorts of companies and organisations,
Sure.
don't you, Hector? And you spend time with, the education system, I assume, as well as private sector companies, etc. What's the feeling you get around the importance that the younger generation place on this type of conversation on accessibility and inclusion?
That's a great question. That's the bit that actually fills me with a lot of hope. Is when I meet young in career interns at Microsoft, and we've done this thing where we're putting disability, inclusion, accessibility at the top of the agenda. Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, Brad Smith, president of Microsoft, they regularly talk about this topic. And so there's, like I say, there's almost like an expectation that people jump on board and get involved. But the young in career, they have this kind of social justice mentality, I would say, really early in life, way more than I did. Like I was interested in going to the pub, playing football. I get that. People really care about people, and like they hate injustice. There's a generation coming through, and they're able to get kind of opinionated quickly on social media and educated quickly on social media about the issues involved. And so I'm really, that's the bit that kind of gives me a bit of hope, actually, is that they see this topic, they realize they can do something about it, and they do jump on board. So much of what we do in accessibility is just micro behavior change. It's literally, I'm joining this meeting and I'm going to remind people that there are captions available, or I'm going to put that photo on social media and I'm going to make sure it's described for somebody that's blind. The technology can go so far, but fundamentally the human has to behave inclusively. And I do think that the younger generation coming through, like, you show them how to do it, they just do it. They just do it because they don't want to be seen to be excluding. This generation coming through have really got this drilled into them that inclusion matters. And that it's harmful when we don't include people. So that I love. I love.
Yeah.
It's just pull them off Xbox a bit. That's all I say.
Yeah. I remember one of the first times we spoke, and for the record, Hector, you were hugely kind of inspiring when Hable were working out what to specialize in. If I'm honest, we knew we were a Microsoft partner. And when you started early on encouraging us to think about this area, it was kind of company changing, actually, and we've done our best to push this agenda through. But I remember thinking the big flip for me was, it's not about trying to cater for the few, it's about getting the many to understand this. And can you talk a little bit more about that, about how you got it in Microsoft in particular, from a view that it's about catering for special needs, as your mum as a special needs teacher, how it would have been described, to mainstreaming it, if you like.
Yeah. So, and firstly, I remember those first conversations really well as well, and it actually filled me with a lot of energy at the start. It's like, will partners care about accessibility when there's so many things that Microsoft throws at our partner network to look at and get involved in? I think you got very early that actually this is a brand perception piece as well as a deliverable. In the same way that we say that this generation coming through care about inclusion and care about exclusion, they also will buy from companies who've put this at the forefront and said, actually, we're inclusion. We care about this, and we're going to take a stand, and we're going to have an opinion on this topic. But to talk about the scaling accessibility, that you got it exactly right. The demographics are there. 1 in 6 people have a disability in the world. Now, not all disabilities are disabling, if that makes sense. Yeah. So when I think about people who are colorblind, for example, pretty much cope pretty well. There you go. So cope pretty much in life. But there's this occasional scenario that you get when Wales play Ireland in the rugby. The red team play the green team on the green pitch, and you kind of go, not for me. Yeah. So it's not spoiling your life, but you do kind of go, this just doesn't work for me. Now, on the accessibility piece, that's the bit that's landing really well. People get terrified by this topic at first if they're not careful. They look at people who are blind and they go, I've got absolutely no idea how a blind person reads an email, and I don't want to show that I don't know. Yeah, and they run away. Yeah. But what we're starting to see, and I think you've been pioneering a lot of this actually, is that when you lead with disability, as you go into kind of things like deploying our products and moving to the next version of Office, people kind of go, and you say, we want to make sure that people who are dyslexic, people who are colorblind, people who've forgotten their glasses, people who are just aging in the workplace, we want to make sure that they all optimize their experience and have the tools that allow them to be productive. Let's make sure we kind of focus on that word, productive and kind of optimized in their work, school, wherever it is, on a daily basis. People love this topic because so many people are sitting there using the technology the way that it's been spoon-fed to them. Yeah, they've kind of just been told, well, here's the design, go use it. And you come in and you say, well, actually, but hang on, this is here's your vanilla. But if you want to magnify, Windows key plus. If you want to turn the colorblind features on, Control Windows key C. Yeah, if you want to have this read to you using the dyslexia tools, Control U in browser. Yeah, it's this idea that you're kind of saying, please don't think we're assuming you're going to use it the exact way we designed it for you at the start. We want to give you options and we want to empower you to have these options. When you start having those conversations, the IT leaders, the HR leaders, the D&I leaders in these major organizations around the world suddenly go, oh, hang on, I'm in the IT, I can help with this agenda, and actually I want to make us as an organization productive. So it's not a niche topic. Everybody wants to, and then if you take it beyond the 1 in 6 people who have disabilities, how many of us just want to use technology in lots of different ways? The new, I don't know if you're using this yet, but Play My Email in Outlook, on the Outlook app. When you're dog walking.
Sarah's just told me about that.
Right,
dictating while I'm dog walking, but I haven't been playing emails while I'm dog walking.
But you're going to be able to just play your emails while you're dog walking. You're literally just going to be able to just listen to your emails really nicely and just get them done. Well, it starts in disability, that tech, and then suddenly everybody else just goes, this is just good design. This is just giving people options. That's really all that accessibility is.
There are so many stories. I remember you telling me about that, Hector. That's what blew me away. The features we take for granted. I think was blurring background in Teams.
That's right.
One of those where it was created with accessibility in mind, but everybody benefits from it.
Yeah, it's almost like kind of better than that. It was designed by somebody with a disability to tackle their own challenge that they had on a daily basis. So if you think about jumping between lots of different people in a call, visually that's incredibly tiring for somebody that's deaf. It's fatiguing. It is more than and the more you speak to the deaf community, they'll say it's like, this really exhausts me on a daily basis, this new experience we've got. And so the blurred background was designed to help somebody who lip reads, Swetha, who works in our team. She designed the blurred background so she could very quickly jump between faces in a call, and it would be less fatiguing for her. And now you see people say, oh, look at this amazing security feature that Microsoft created. It's like, had nothing to do with security. It was always about disability. So yeah. People make it what they want it to be once it's out. But this shouldn't surprise us. If you look back at my career, the disability world has always been full of people just kind of going, right, what's the latest, greatest technology, and how do I apply it to my experience? And they just got inventing and just getting things working for themselves.
So what's happened during the pandemic and the kind of, enforced en masse work from home that we've seen? Has that kind of changed what you're seeing in terms of how organisations are tackling accessibility, or has it thrown up a whole bunch of issues that we didn't know about because people have to work from home?
It's the headline. If I kind of think about kind of my daily conversation with major organisations, it's forced disclosure, which is a word that not everybody loves. But what we also have to recognise is that so many people with disabilities are hiding them. It's like you're only talking about the fact you're colourblind, Mark, because it came up in conversation. You don't walk around going like, "Hey, everyone, I'm colourblind." So people hide their disabilities. They don't feel any need necessarily to talk about them until they're excluded, until they kind of go, well, hang on, this just doesn't work for me. So a huge number of people, as soon as they were forced to work from home, had to start talking to their employers about their disabilities. Yeah, because actually they were being told to use tech in a certain way. They were told that work looked like this now, and it became more disabling for them, particularly the deaf community. I mean, that was a big one. I mean, I was talking to one organization recently who told me over 300 employees disclosed their deafness to them through the pandemic. Wow. 300. And this is a kind of a central government organization, but that's a lot of people, and that's just the people who came forward, right? But when you think about that scale, those people would have been coping in the physical workspace. They'd have been walking into the meeting rooms early. They'd have been getting themselves to the front of the room. They'd have just been positioning themselves so they could lip read the person who was speaking. Yeah, they would have been doing their hacks on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
So in that example, how did that organisation respond? What
Yeah.
did they do?
Well, they contact. I mean, because we're much more out there talking about disability and accessibility, they're coming to us now, which is great. I mean, that's been one of the biggest kind of pleasures of my last 5 years, that people now know we're in the game, that we're here, and actually Microsoft as one of the major tech companies in the world is sitting there going, yeah, we're in disability and we're here, we want to help. So they're definitely coming to us. We saw the disability answer desk usage through the pandemic has doubled. So literally twice the number of people are coming to us to talk about disability issues, but they're getting in touch with us, our partners, and our customer success teams inside Microsoft to just sort of say, like, help. Now, what's nice is it's also raised the profile of the people who work with this in organizations. So for many organizations, the disability team or the workplace adjustment team, they're kind of a small group just making things happen within their organization, but the pandemic has raised their profile within the organization. So what I'm doing now, a lot of my time now, is doing mass awareness sessions inside companies around deaf features, vision features, dyslexia features, and we're doing them as webinars inside organizations. The turn up, people, the sign up to these events is much bigger than the employers first think. They put them out there and they say, okay, we'll try it, and then they realize, 90, 100 people have just turned up for this dyslexia event, and they say, I didn't even know we had people with dyslexia, right? So that what we're seeing through the pandemic is employers are being more proactive about helping people with their way of work. They're recognizing it's different for everybody. They're going out and saying, let's do some sessions on what the new workplace looks like. What does the hybrid workplace look like as we start to go back? But the more enlightened ones, I would say, or the ones that are connected with us on accessibility, they're doing specific sessions on accessibility to help people, recognizing that many people are not sharing their disabilities, but they're just doing it anyway. They're just making sure that they give the opportunity for people to come and listen and learn.
That's one of the things I really hope that comes out of this pandemic, is that whilst it's like a two-way conversation, isn't it? Organizations feel more aware of this as a conversation and I guess informed about how to engage with their people on it, but equally people feeling more comfortable to talk about it and to recognize, that their employers might be able to help them, that it's not a weakness, that it's something that their employees want to help them in order for them to be more productive, etc. You talked about epilepsy. Then we had an amazing intern who you met, Sakela, who we learned so much from, because she just opened up and helped us be brave to have a conversation with her, where both parties had to be brave around epilepsy, what that meant, and what we needed to do as an organisation. And that was mind blowing for me to understand that.
And you mentioned earlier, it's like when people with disabilities, if they're not sharing their disability, they're sitting there thinking, oh, I don't want to be, I don't want to bring this up at work. We're starting to see a world where people are saying, actually, my lived experience with a disability is a benefit to my organization. Yeah. So no matter what type of organization you are, you're selling products to people with disabilities, you're delivering digital experiences to people with disabilities. If you don't have people with disabilities talking about their disability inside your workplace, literally, you're apart from the conversation. You're not designing with that in mind, because you're not having the internal conversation. Those organizations that are having a confident internal conversation about you as an organization and how you work around disability are the ones that will actually start to deliver better experiences for the general public, and the citizens, I would say, at large. So many organizations, and I would include government in this, so many government organizations that we go into, they're still having an obligation conversation about disability and a risk management conversation about disability. The more enlightened public sector, and I would definitely say, the private sector enterprise organizations, they're starting to have a conversation about the advantage, the advantage of having diversity within an organization. And actually, how the people who care about every company's product are the employees. Whether you're selling cars, software, whether you're a supermarket, your employees are the ones that care about you as a business. And when disabled employees within those organizations are saying, I can't use your website, actually when the driver comes up, he's not, to deliver my groceries, he's not being inclusive, he's not recognizing, can we do some training here? Those organizations, like, by caring about their own employers, people with disabilities will actually start to improve those organizations and make them ready for the 21st century. That's how I see it. And that's certainly our experience at Microsoft.
Is that confidence to kind of come forward and talk about your disability more likely to be from office-based staff rather than from frontline workers? Because it seems to me in some of the organisations we deal with, the natural instinct might be that they think slightly differently about those two groups, where there's huge value to be gained by listening more to your frontline workers.
Yeah.
But it strikes me they often don't quite have as much confidence to speak out. Huge generalisation, I know.
No.
Do you see that at all?
I think it's definitely a trend we're seeing. This move away from office worker or information worker to first line worker, and the influence those first line workers have on the organization as a whole. In the disability world, accessibility, we've always been looking at either the consumer, the customer, and the experience there, and then we've always been looking at office workers. And now, the more that we've been doing work on things like dyslexia, learning difference, and actually even kind of second language as a disabling experience for people in first line, we've been actually engaging much more with businesses on the accessibility experiences of people in the front line, and it's completely changing the way that we think about our tech. We always are thinking kind of first office Windows, I would say, for accessibility. What we're now starting to see is like standalone apps, the app ecosystem, what's delivered on mobile. How can you start to use some of those tools with first line workers? The fact that if you're in the Edge browser on your mobile phone and you can just right click, hold the screen down in a browser, and then ask it to read aloud, and it will read to somebody who has low levels of literacy. Like, that needs to be known, right? There are many people out there with low levels of literacy working in retail jobs, working in all sorts of jobs around the world, who are increasingly being asked to use digital tools in the workplace. Yeah. So what we're doing is we're actually working now with those groups and actually saying, right, what are the designs that are required here? Yeah. How do we? And it's not necessarily the design. It's also like, what training collateral do we need to put in place so that you understand how to use this technology with your different lived experiences of disability? Blind individuals are not stacking shelves in supermarkets, but dyslexic individuals are, right? Yep. So it's a different conversation, I would say. What I love about honestly, on a general rule, what I love about Microsoft and disability is I spent all my life working in kind of small companies trying to get people to listen. When Microsoft turn up to talk about these issues, people do kind of listen. They let us in and they let us kind of talk. So we can have so much more influence in this space. I hope that's the next big drive in disability and it will really help, because if we're thinking about a certain group within the information worker space or the office worker space, and that's it, that's accessibility, we're missing the opportunity to actually think, no, actually it's a much larger audience than that, and it's also all of the citizens out there accessing your business.
As you're looking further out, Hector, we've talked a bit about the impact that the pandemic has had on this conversation, and if there's been a forcing function, like your example of 300 people going to a central government body they work for and saying, we have hearing challenges, we need to talk about them, we need some help with that. How do you see the next phase of this happening? We hear a lot of organisations talking to us about the hybrid workplace or hybrid work, and how do you see that shaping this conversation over the next couple of years? And I guess also for organisations listening to this, I'm sure they'd be keen on what you'd suggest they think about as they move into that space.
So I say there's two types of people, aren't there? There's some people who've loved this, who've really loved this new way of working, and there are other people who've really struggled with it. Yep. And then there's probably some people who are kind of halfway in between. Moving forward, it's remembering what worked and what didn't work, and not just falling back into the kind of the way that you always worked before. If we think about those 300, I love that we've got that locked example now, right? But if we think about those 300 people, the fact that they've been able to talk about their disabilities, and say, actually, I need these tools to allow this to happen, a lot of organisations will have woken up to the conversation. There'll be lots more people like that who are maybe just not always talking about their preferred way of working. This hybrid gives people the flexibility that they want. So the idea that, for some people, it will be, actually, I really prefer to join remotely and have the live captions in a meeting rather than going to an office, have people cross-talking in a busy meeting room and I don't capture any of it. They're now going to be able to have that conversation. And I would say almost like the smorgasbord, the menu has kind of expanded a little bit. People are sitting there saying, actually, I've got options. So that's that. On the lived experience of disability in the workplace, there'll be so many more employers now who realize what they've got within the fabric of their organization, and it makes it easier to employ more people with disabilities. Now that is where it starts to get super exciting. We want people with disabilities to turn up after the pandemic and say, well, just give me Teams, and I'll work remotely, and and I don't have to kind of struggle with a tube in the morning, and I can be massively productive, and because we know this now, yeah, that level of conversation, it gets where it starts to get really exciting, because consistently around the globe, there's this problem where people with disabilities stay in education for a long time, yeah, because education was almost like a legal duty to be inclusive and to be accessible, but where it falls down is getting a job. Yeah, because either the employer's just not confident enough to kind of know how to work with somebody with a disability, and the person with a disability is kind of maybe not being empowered to say, well, all you need to do is this. Yeah, it's really not difficult, and actually more confident to talk about their disabilities at the very start of the kind of the employment process. So I think confidence. Pandemic's been awful. Right? Let's not beat around the bush. It's been an awful experience in so many ways, but it's been a forcing function on a lot of different issues out there within society. And I try to be optimistic about this. What I love about the increased awareness of disability that we've seen through the process means that nobody can kind of walk away from this pandemic sort of saying it didn't come up. It came up everywhere. It came up everywhere. Yeah. And it also came up in a lot of the kind of the rushed designs in society. So when you look at, the apps, the track and trace apps, yeah, the bookings for inoculation, all these sorts of things. What also happened through the pandemic is people with disabilities started saying, this doesn't work for me. You're telling me it has to be a digital experience. I can't do an in-person experience. This is not accessible. This is not working for me. So people have also got a lot braver and more vocal about those new digital experiences. I mean, this has been a digital pandemic, hasn't it? I mean, it's like everything's been digital first, from the health minister saying, well, you just all doctors appointments will just be digital now. Oh, will they? Well, only if I can access my sign language interpreter, only if I've got captions, only if I can see what's going on. Yeah, so it's this idea that suddenly everyone went, well, everything's got to be digital now. Suddenly, people with disabilities kind of went, you can't transform unless you include me. And then what people think is, actually, not including people with disabilities is going to slow down my digital transformation. It's going to hold me up from actually, modernizing. That puts a real focus on people having this knowledge and skill.
So if there are employers listening to this, thinking this all sounds like a lot to get our heads around, we can't all find an employer, a Hector, to help our organisation go forward. You talked a little bit about disability confident. Can you maybe talk for people who are maybe coming to this topic cold, what employers might need to do to start becoming digitally confident?
Yeah. It starts with a conversation. And I think as we use that phrase, let's just recognise we're sat in the UK now. There is a really great government scheme, which you've signed up to, and thank you for that, called Disability Confidence, which is this recognition that organisations are on a journey. Every organisation is on a journey in this space. Some people are literally at step one, never had this conversation, and they've realised a problem has come up, a customer issue or an employee issue that they don't know how to deal with. So we live in a country in the UK where actually there's a lot of great government support and knowledge support, I would say, from government in this space. Getting on that disability confidence scheme kind of doesn't allow you to stay still. It recognises that actually you're not allowed to just sit at level 1. They're constantly pushing you to level 2 and then to level 3 leader status. But this idea that it is a journey is the best start for everybody. Don't feel you have to be perfect on day one. Be humble about this. You're allowed to get it wrong. I loved it when we started talking about this, how you would kind of call me and say, oh, Hector, I've just put this social media post out. Is it accessible? Please tell me what's wrong. I don't want to get this wrong. That not wanting to get it wrong is a curse. It is a curse. It's like, get it wrong. Don't worry about it. Get it wrong. Yeah. Do it. Put a statement out. Put your values out there. Start to try to be accessible. And what it does, it drives feedback. Yeah.
But I agree. I didn't mind the occasional bollocking from Hector when I tried something and it wasn't. So I'd get this text saying, you haven't got alt text on your LinkedIn post. And actually, that's how I learned. We learn by doing, don't we? So it's much better to be brave and to try things.
Yeah. And then having the conversation. I loved it that you started employing people with disabilities and pushing that conversation forward. And the reason is it's the mentality of kind of provision to consumer, or provision to the HR department mentality, right? Of kind of all right, what's the risk here of getting this wrong? Yeah, is challenging. Yeah, actually, supporting the voice of people with disabilities in your organization, large or small, and creating space to have a conversation, and just saying this is a safe conversation to have. Like we want to improve, we want to get better at this. That's where you start to find out what's working and what's not working. But if you try to move away from this legal risk compliance issue a bit, that's definitely a great step. People talk to me sometimes about the accuracy of the captions in Teams. And they say things like, well, it's not 100% accurate. And you're like, no, it's not, but it's unbelievably accurate compared to where the technology was 2 years ago. And it's going to keep improving because the data is just getting richer and richer. There's no legal requirement to put AI generated captions on a video. There's no legal risk in not supplying that, right? But we want to do it because it's the right thing to do, and it drives productivity and it drives inclusion and all those other things, yeah. But the fact that I'm able to kind of sit here and say that without any fear of risk of some kind of legal letter about the accuracy, it shows them where we're starting to get to with the maturity on accessibility. It makes me think of the security conversations we have as well. It's like everyone starts from that absolute fear of a security episode, a mistake, yeah, and that is disabling, to use it for lack of a better word. People they get frozen in making progress because they're so worried about the incident itself. It's that Jerry Maguire thing. It's like, now we're finally talking. It's like, isn't it? It's like, you think I'm angry, I just think we're finally communicating. I love those conversations with my employees, and my colleagues around the world, where people sit there and say, Microsoft's so confidently talks about disability now. It's like, you must be perfect at this. No way. Like we have a global company. We're trying to develop, to change attitudes on disability and drive progress. The thought that every single tool inside Microsoft is accessible to all of our employees, like, we're not there yet. But we're constantly learning, and we've created a culture of permission, to complain, to moan, to ask for change, and the trick is allowing everybody within an organization to make their micro commitment, their micro change, get that micro behavior change. So if you're a learning officer within an organization, it's like, okay, I'll make commitments to start making more of our learning tools more accessible. If you're an IT department, it's like, okay, I'll make sure we create time in the diary to talk about the accessibility of our biz apps. It's just this. We can't just expect this Hector Minto to come into every organization and just wave a magic wand. An HR person has to make commitments. An estates and facilities person has to make commitments. A D&I person needs to make commitments, and we just iterate and move forward. It's this journey. Accessibility is a journey for everyone.
You're so right about this, this mentality of risk averse, and and I've definitely been guilty of that. I've been afraid of a conversation. I've backed away from it, and the recipient's probably therefore been impacted negatively as a result of that. And actually just being, it's okay to not know and to ask. Again, back to that Sakella video, which we'll link in the notes. That was a big deal for me around understanding that it's good to ask, it's good to be curious, and she felt empowered as a result of that.
Exactly.
Conversation was really good. One of my favourite things you did, Hector, was during the election. And you had
I thought this might come up.
Which I loved. I think the hashtag was it no caption, no vote?
No captions, no vote, yeah.
And what was refreshing was how politicians responded. And I noticed as a witness, as an audience member to this conversation, those politicians that engaged with you and said, "Thanks, Hector. I hadn't known how to do this. You've shown me how to do it. All of my content will now have captions." I instantly felt much more, even if they were of parties that I wasn't close to, much more, receptive to them.
Right, so let me just put a little proviso on this. That was not official Microsoft business.
Not endorsed by Redmond.
Yeah, that's right. Right, so I said earlier this was like a digital pandemic, and it is, right? Like, everything's been digital first. Well, the last election in the UK was digital for the first time, and frankly, a whole host of politicians well, prospective politicians, let's call them that, started chasing our votes, right? And they were doing it digitally for the first time, and they were going out there with these awful monologues to camera. Rory Stewart was my favourite. Do you remember that one where he was like walking around? Anyway, and they walk around with their phone to camera, and talking to, hey, I'm your prospective candidate. Great to meet you. And it was like, actually, there are legal regulations for the public sector for accessibility. It's against the law for a public sector organization to communicate with the general public in a non-accessible format. Okay, so I just went, wow, fine, hang on. If you want the vote, you want everybody's vote. I'm assuming you don't just want non-disabled people's votes. You want people who are deaf to vote for you too, don't you? Well, if you're doing this, it's non-accessible, no captions, no vote. So we started putting this out there, and it was really fascinating. Mark and I share the same MP, I assume. Yeah, we do. And she was amazing. I'm not going to name her because I don't want to start endorsing her or anything, but she was amazing. She just kind of came back and she went, I had no idea. I didn't know that I was being, I was excluding people. Please tell me more. Now, there were other politicians who messaged me who sort of went, don't you dare start doing this to me. So there were definitely two types. There were those, what we call learn-it-alls, and there were the know-it-alls who were going, hey, who are you to tell me what it is? It goes back to that kind of thing again of like, humility is a really important we should embrace humility. Yeah. We should want humble people who want to actually adapt, who are ready to listen in positions of power in the world. I think we've moved past this point where people, just getting the big figurehead telling us all what to do and we all do it. It's actually, you only make change if people listen. Yeah. So I loved doing it, and it got national press. Generally, it was in like some of the newspapers. The RNID, the deaf charity over here, they picked up on it and started running with it. But it was just it goes back to that kind of concept of a micro behavior. It is so easy to add captions to video. It's literally minutes of work to add it in this day and age where we've got AI to generate these captions. So learn how to just use a simple app and put captions on your video, and you'll reach more people. You might even win. Right? You might actually get a few more votes, and you might actually win. And it was great, but it was definitely a learning experience because, as I say, you learned like the know-it-alls and the learn-it-alls. I thought that was a great experience.
So, guys, I can't believe I'm going to have to do this, but we don't have much time left. And I think everybody listening would agree we could talk for hours and hours. And those of you who've seen Hector present at an event, I'm sure would say you could watch him speak and do cool demos for hours and hours as well. But we're going to have to draw this to a close in a sec. I thought two last things. We saw behind your shoulder earlier on, you've got a kind of model of Stephen Hawking's, right? So I wondered if you could tell people very quickly the story about that. And then the final thing would be to tell them where they could go. Are there URLs or Microsoft pages where people should go to find out about some of the things you've been talking about today?
We are going to get time to talk about football teams as well, right? I'm allowed to do that. No, okay.
I'm happy to be late for my next meeting.
No worries. Okay, so yeah, behind me, I mean, this is like anybody's office at home, isn't it? I've got a frisbee on this side because I used to play competitive frisbee. My model of Stephen Hawking is don't laugh at competitive frisbee, Mark.
Sorry, just never played it. Maybe we should try.
Yeah, we should. I had the privilege, of working with Stephen Hawking early in my career. That's actually when my background was always physical disability and speech disabilities, and so I worked with Stephen Hawking with his communication aid, which is amazing experience. Very demanding customer, I'd have to say. Very demanding customer. But he had one of these on his desk. He was in an episode of The Simpsons. If you've not seen it, you can look it up, and it's a really very funny episode. But what I loved was that like, of all the things that Stephen Hawking had achieved, genuinely, I was chatting to him about this. Of all the things that he'd achieved, one of the things he was most proud of was being on The Simpsons, and making kind of science consumable, and like approachable, and so I mean, obviously, amazing guy, amazing role model. But I loved the fact that he had it on his desk. So I came away from my meetings with him, and I was onto eBay straight away, like buying up
Brilliant.
all of my Stephen Hawking models. So I actually have about 30 of those in my attic, and I give them to people that I love occasionally. People that I've loved working with. Maybe I'll drop one around to you, Mike.
Brilliant. So look, I'm happy to be late for my next meeting if you are. So let's ask Sean, shall we? What football team do you support, Hector?
I'm a Southampton FC fan.
Southampton FC.
Well, just
I thought you were from Bristol. I thought you were from Bristol.
oh, this is terrible, isn't it? This is the worst. This is the worst kind of people. I watched Bristol Rovers as a lad growing up, and I went to all the games. Then I went to university in Southampton and got lured in by Matt Le Tissier. Yeah, yeah.
So that's who you wanted to be when you grew up. Was it Matt Le Tissier? Hence, I remember the Southampton shirt at five-a-side football when we
Are
played.
we going to
last
mention the last time we played football, Mark, and that open goal you missed?
Oh, that hasn't come up.
Whew.
Hector,
I mean, it
I
was.
didn't know about
I mean,
this.
there are some open goals that I mean, there are open goals and there are open goals. I mean,
time.
that one was
God.
pretty.
I'm a defender. I'm a left back.
You really are. You really are.
Hector played this through ball, and I smashed it miles over the bar. And he made some rude comment about Microsoft trying to help partners and then messing it up. He dug me out on the pitch. I was crushed, absolutely crushed.
And there was no
pretty-
goalkeeper involved. It was literally you just smashed the ball wide with no goalkeeper.
I'm pretty sure there was a goalkeeper. Whether he was any good or not, I couldn't comment. But no,
The
the
story's
football
better if
didn't.
there was no goalkeeper.
The goalkeeper was
All
not
right,
involved.
But that's why you wanted to talk about football.
Yeah, that's the only reason. That's right.
Complete bastard. So, okay, nice football chat, Hector. Thank you very much. Do you know what I thought? I haven't discussed this with Sean, but I keep thinking we should organise a Hable five-a-side tournament. So I'm going to ask you live on the podcast, if we did a Hable five-a-side tournament, are you going to bring a Microsoft team to our Hable five-a-side
I
tournament?
don't have to be on your team. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I also don't want to be on Mark's team, so I'll switch.
I've got 3 sons, so I just need one more, and I think that'll be my team. I'll just show up
Yeah, they're good.
as Team Reynolds instead. Yeah.
Like, they didn't miss.
No, they're much better than I am, aren't they? Yeah, the 2 eldest are much better than I am. So thank you. What a great way to finish. So Hector, if people have been listening to this and want to know more, either to connect with you or to find out information about Microsoft and what they're doing to help organisations get disability confident or skilled upon accessibility, where should they go? What should they do?
I'd ask 2 things. Microsoft.com/accessibility, and just see across the kind of the wide topic and how we're approaching it. I think that's valuable for anyone, from the tools to the culture side of things. You know, make sure you look at both. The other thing I would say is get a qualification. You know, and, like accessibility is a skill. It's like anything. You know, it's like once you know what to do, you know, you start to behave differently. So we have a training course on Microsoft Learn called Accessibility Fundamentals. You can earn your digital qualification in accessibility and put it on your CV. You know, like, you know, go to that next job interview and let people see that you have, you know, 101 level in disability inclusion and tech and accessibility. We really want this to be a desirable qualification that people kind of wear with pride. So yeah, please take the course and tag me on LinkedIn. Let me know that you took it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So Hector, I've really enjoyed this as our first guest. I think it's been
What an honour.
Brilliant. Yeah, and
No better first guest. And on behalf of all the, you know, the B&B community, the bald and bearded community, you know, you are the role model, Hector.
Did you just
I
invent
have
your
no
own
comment.
community?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, I did. Yeah, that's the first.
Good.
on
Well,
the
I'll,
Hable
I'll,
Talks
I'll
podcast.
stand in solidarity with my B&B brothers on this call and say thanks everybody for listening. Please do subscribe, and we'll see you again next time on Hable Talks. Thank you.